we
Right?
go.
Sorry, my daughter is like pulling stuff out of the cabinets as I'm doing this. So
It is a Monday.
mom life, it
Mom,
is.
you're just like rocking it on all ends.
It at least it won't be uninteresting for your audience because I'm sure that I'll probably be interrupted like 10 times, but it'll be
Hey,
free entertainment along with your lives. So it's like a bonus.
beauty. That's the beauty. I would rather have like an up close conversation than something totally polished and perfect because there's nothing, I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect warrior, anyways.
Nope.
Gotta have like grit and a lot going on to be a warrior.
Yep. Well, thank you. Anyways, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the invite.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Literally, when we launched this new segment with BecomingMeTV, and it was right around the time that you even had announced that you kicked off your brand new podcast. And so I immediately
Yeah.
had like, and one of the things that I've been thinking about with warrior conversations are conversations I have with warrior friends or things that inspire and encourage me that I would want to talk to you about. And I know BecomingMe.tv and so many others are interested in too. And so
Yeah.
watching the journey, I was like, man, it takes a lot of courage to start something new. And before we dive in, Megan, I would love first welcome everybody who's joining us. Let Megan and I know that you're here to say hey, and even let us know what state you're in, and that would be a lot of. Or hit the wave button, share this with your friends. But Megan, if someone didn't know who you were yet, or they haven't watched your Becoming story, because we did interview you recently,
Yeah.
introduce who is Megan.
Yeah, so I'm a mom. My daughter is handing me biscuit cutters at the moment while I'm trying to answer this question. She wants to play with them. I'm a mama. I have a 2-year-old daughter named Ellie, so you'll probably hear and possibly see her running around in the background. But you know, in the context of Instagram, how if you might know me as I have a background in graphic design, so I'm a graphic designer by trade. I did that for a number of years and actually just recently transitioned out of that and stepping more into like creative coaching, creative consulting, and teaching in some capacities as well, and mentoring other creatives. And as Emily just mentioned, I also just launched a podcast. So stepping into a lot of new things. So there's a lot of context for our conversation today. But yeah, I've worn a lot of hats over the years, especially in the last 5 years. There's been a lot of transition, a lot of shift, but it's good things. It is challenging and scary to step into new things and to do new things, which I'm sure we will dig into in this conversation. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit of context for who I am. The name of my business, I'm sure you guys can see, you know, my handle on here. The name of my business is Building 7. And so there's a little bit of a story behind that too. But that is kind of the umbrella under, you know, that I do everything that I do under my business Building 7. And so, yeah, does that answer your question?
I love it. Now I feel like, do you mind unpacking the story behind Building 7?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to dive into that because it's a little bit of a sidebar. But yeah, so the story behind the name Building 7 is just a really fun story from when I was in college. I was an advertising and marketing major at a business school in undergrad. And so my advertising teacher was super fun and kind of didn't play by the rules. And so sometimes we would come to class and there would be like a post-it note on the classroom door that said, class moved to Building 7. And that was kind of like our insider secret that we would all just go meet at Panera behind campus. But technically for her to like move our class off campus, it was like considered like a field trip and there's all this paperwork and we're like, we don't want to do that. So she would just put like a note and it was like our secret that all the advertising majors knew if we came to class and we saw that, we would just go meet at Panera. And so those classes were always just super fun and like creative. And we always came up with really cool ad campaign ideas. And they were just really like interactive and like just some of my favorite memories from college, like as an advertising major, came from some of those classes that we would have at Panera. And so I always had this little seed, I guess, that God kind of planted in my heart. And I just thought, he kind of gave me a heart for like creating space for creativity, and so it's kind of the whole heart behind the name of my business and everything that I do. And it used to, really encompass my graphic design services and how I served my design clients. And now it's kind of transitioned into how I serve my coaching clients, and just how I just create space for creativity for whoever I work with. So
That is cool. That's really cool, backing the name. And what a fun memory too,
mm-hmm.
college.
Yeah.
I that's awesome. So,
Mm-hmm.
you've walked through transition, change, you've launched
Mm-hmm.
new things, you're an entrepreneur, you're leading the way in so many different areas. And it takes a lot of courage to start new things.
Yes.
So let's walk through, how do you have the courage to pivot before we talk about the courage to start something new? Like
Mm-hmm.
with the transitions that you've had and stuff is just changing, change can be scary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you lean into and embrace having courage when there's just a lot of change, whether you're choosing the change or maybe you're not choosing the change?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that I think I've always kind of wrestled with the word pivot too, because I think pivot is when you think about the motion that you're doing when you're pivoting, you're kind of staying in the same dimension or place, but you're just kind of changing directions, right? It's more of a redirection. And I think sometimes change can look like that, and other times it's more of like a complete shift, maybe upward or like in a completely different direction, or an elevation to a completely new dimension of what you've been doing and stepping up and into something completely different and completely new. And so that's even more of a stretch, right? To step in to something, it's not so much of a lateral movement, but like a completely, like you're stepping up and into something completely new and different. And so if someone is listening to this or they catch it on the replay and you're in that space, like I just want to encourage you that it is really hard and it's really challenging, and it's probably one of the most stretching things that you'll ever do. But I would just encourage you to lean into that and to trust God in the process. And yeah, I think, having the courage to step into new things really just looks like having the courage to start. A lot of the times, just having the courage to trust God that He's leading you, and to trust that sense that you have in your spirit, and just take that first step. Because a lot of the times, I think we wait, or we can be, paralyzed by perfection, and that can keep us from making any progress. So not allowing yourself those fears, or even just the uncertainty, because there is a lot of uncertainty that comes with stepping into new things, because it might be something completely new that you don't have any experience in. And so if you're in that place, just trusting God, that He's moving you in the right direction, and just having the courage to take that first step into whatever it is that you sense Him calling you into.
Oh man, that is so good. And I would love to even hear, Megan, as you've made these huge steps and you've started new things, what are some that really help you lean into trusting God? Because sometimes somebody might be watching like, Megan, like Emily, I trust God, but when that fear and uncertainty that you talked about starts bubbling up, what are just some things I can put my hands around to help me in taking that step to start trusting God? What's helping you?
Yeah, I would say, I'm going to check on my daughter really quick, make sure she's, not getting into the laundry detergent tablet. She was. I would say the number one thing is obviously staying in close relationship with the Lord, stay in the Word, and just stay steep, make sure you're staying in the Word. So that, I think that's, for me at least, and I think that's true for all of us, right? Connecting with God through His Word is how He speaks to us primarily, and through prayer, right? So just making sure that you are just being diligent in that, and just making time and space to just sit with God and hear from him, so that you can hear how he's leading you and how he's directing you. And I think when we're faithful to do that, he is also faithful to speak to us through his word. And the other thing I would say is seek out wisdom from other people, from trusted people in your circle. Like if just using a podcast as an example, if you want to start a podcast, right, and you feel God leading you to do that, then who do you know that has a podcast, or, ask someone to be on their podcast so you can learn the process, know what it's like. And just seek out wisdom from other people in your life who are doing the thing that you want to do. So I think that, can be a really helpful thing just to give you like practical wisdom, in addition to like receiving wisdom and direction from God.
No, I love what you said. Like, it's time in God's word, it's talking with him, and then who's that trusted group of people around you that you're asking. But also, I like pointed, what is the thing you want to start or try or do, and who's doing that? And just asking, like, over and over the years, I've literally DM'd people, emailed them, just like that's how we even connected. You never know what somebody's going to say. And sometimes I think we can, the fear or uncertainty we allowed hold us back from starting something new. And so, like, if we would have never ended up connecting on Instagram DM, we wouldn't have filmed story be on Instagram Live right now. And so we didn't let fear or uncertainty hold us back, but we leaned in and got to know each other's story. So make that make that. Don't say no for somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Because and you probably will have people that say no, or it might just not ever even respond. That's happened to me. It's okay. Like the right person will respond. Like, when I first started, I don't know, feeling led into graphic design right after I had finished college. I didn't go to school for graphic design in undergrad. And so, I kind of had like this just disruption season after college, and then was kind of trying to like figure out, where I was going after that. And kind of felt like God nudging me in the direction of graphic design. And I happened to be reading a devotional at the time, and the woman who created it was a graphic designer. And so I emailed her. I said, hey, I'm in the process of, researching grad school, and I think I want to go back to school for this. And I said, can I come job shadow you? And she said yes, and there were some people that I asked that didn't respond or said no, and that's okay. Like, now I'm still connected with her. In fact, I just recorded a podcast episode with her the other day for my podcast, and she has been like such a positive influence on my life. I go to her conferences, like, we're still connected. And so you never know like what sending a simple email can do and where it will lead you, and how God can use just that small step of obedience to like move you forward in the direction that he's guiding you. So yeah, that's a really, really great point, Emily.
Yeah, it's I like what you said too about the small steps and how you never know how that's going to guide you to where God is leading you. It out like, so let me ask, let's dive into your podcast a little bit, because you just launched it, right? And so when you started this brand new podcast, walk me through, like, you're starting something new, you're a full-time mom too, you this doesn't you have your own business, so you're going to add one more thing into the mix. Walk me through just all the feelings surrounding that. Like, did you have it all figured out? How did you push past the uncertainty? Walk us through the journey of starting something new in the midst of an already full plate.
Yeah. Well, I think it's those two things that I said before. I was in the beginning of last year, I was in a coaching program with a mentor of mine, and a lot of what I'm doing now has been born out of, and God has kind of birthed that out of the work that I did from that. And so I think, continuing to work on yourself and invest in yourself is incredibly important, so that God can like open your eyes to new things that he's doing in your life. And he uses other people to do that a lot of the time. So I think continuing to invest and develop yourself and investing in things like coaching and things like that is incredibly important. And that's really where God kind of gave me this idea and this heart for my podcast. And so, I had this idea for a podcast, and, continually spending time with the Lord and his word, and just getting more and more like wisdom and direction in that. But then also, I did, exactly what I said. I said, okay, I want to start a podcast. I had kind of mapped out my heart for it and what I wanted it to be. And so I had a good friend of mine who had a successful podcast. And so I asked her, I said, hey, can I come to your house, for a weekend? She lives in Nashville. And can we kind of just like workshop this, and we kind of help me kind of get some legs under this and see what does it look like to create a podcast? Because I had no idea. I've never done this before. Like, I've been on other people's podcasts, but I have no idea what the backside of running a podcast looks like, and like how to technically set it up and like make it a real thing. And she, is like, yeah, sure. So, it's like I took the heart of what God gave me and how he's directing me. And then practically I reached out to someone who had been doing it and doing it very well. And so I knew that if I could connect those things, that I could be faithful in creating and walking this thing out. And so that's really what helped me from a practical, like, there's just real things that need to happen to create a podcast. And so seeking out wisdom from my friend, someone I trusted and I knew, I could trust with my vision and all those things. So it's important, I think, too, to consider the source of who you're reaching out to for wisdom and guidance. But, kind of putting those two things together. What is God showing you? Who do you know that can help you? And just ask for help, and now I have a podcast. And so, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but had I not done those things, I wouldn't have a podcast right now. If I hadn't continued to seek God for direction and guidance and wisdom and how to, like, the heart behind it and the vision for it. And then if I hadn't practically reached out to someone and just asked for help to be able to, like, hey, like, how do I connect my podcast to Apple? And, like, there's just so many little things that go into it that would have felt incredibly overwhelming and held me back had I not reached out to a friend. And she's like, oh yeah, let me show you how to do that. So like, that's what the body of Christ looks like too. It's like, we're not meant to like have to figure everything out on our own. Like, we're supposed to ask for help. And so, yeah, I think that's like probably the two things I would say that were the most helpful, that just gave me more confidence and courage to take steps forward, because I felt more like I was prepared and ready to step into the new thing, because I had been doing the work of seeking wisdom from God and just getting help from, someone who was doing the thing that God was putting on my heart to do.
It sounds like the secret sauce to having the courage to start is seeking, staying rooted in his word, in talking, and then reaching out and asking people for help. Like, it just sounds like 2 steps have set you up to have that courage to start this new. If somebody was watching or they're listening and they're like, okay, I hear you, Megan. Like, I hear you, ask somebody for help. But like, can't I just Google it and figure it out by myself? I'm like, I don't want to ask for help, or maybe some pride, or you feel embarrassed to ask. How could somebody push past that and just ask somebody for the help?
I think you can certainly do everything. You could try to do everything on your own, right? But I don't think that we're designed to like operate in isolation. I think God created us for community and to invite other people in. And, just going back to the idea of like the body of Christ working together, like, we're not supposed to be able to do everything on our own. And so, even if you don't know someone personally, like you said, like, send someone in a DM on Instagram or send someone an email. I didn't know the lady that I reached out to was a designer. I did not know her. She did not know me, like, we had no context other than I was reading the devotional. So, and God is so faithful to put things in your path in the right timing. Right when I had the idea to launch this podcast in July of last year, a friend of mine who I had been on her podcast launched a course about how to create a podcast. And I was like, yes, Lord, thank you. You know what I mean? Like things like that. If your eyes are open to see it and you're open to receive it, like he will send you the guidance that you need step by step. It's kind of like the daily bread thing, you know, like he'll send you exactly what you need if you're faithful to just keep moving forward. And so, yeah, it's crazy. Like as you start obediently stepping into and just taking like the next step, even if you don't know what the next one is going to be, like God will send you a person or he'll send you a resource that will help you, equip you, and help keep you moving forward.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, and it's so true with BecomingMe.TV. Most of the people whose stories I have the privilege of sharing, it's because we connected online. We might not have like met in real life, but I've been across them on social media, or they've come across BecomingMe.TV, and we've struck up a conversation. And people are willing to share their story or a fresh idea. Like even the concept of warrior conversations. I was in conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago, and she was like, you should try Instagram Live. Like, why are you doing TV the way you've just always done it? Like, keep doing stuff, but like, try something new. Try an Instagram Live. So last month, I tried an Instagram Live, and like warrior conversations was born. You never know, like what ideas. Like you said, if your eyes are just open to it. You know, I would love to ask you now, if somebody was kind of tuning in and they're like, man, I've always wanted to start a podcast. That sounds fun. What are a couple things you wish you would have known before starting your podcast, or that you learned in the process that you really want to make sure a new podcaster has these tools in their belt?
Oh man. I mean, I kind of learned everything because I knew nothing. So, I mean, I would say number one, if someone's watching this who is like, I feel like God wants me to start a podcast, but I don't even know, like, I've only listened to like a handful of podcast interviews in my life. And so, you know, if that's you and you're in that place, like it's okay to like be at the beginning of something and not know anything. You can definitely figure it out along the way. And like I said, I think God is faithful to provide the guidance and the wisdom and the direction that we need. But like, man, I mean, there's just so many different things that go into it. I would say just like one thing that I created for myself, just kind of unintentionally, but it was really helpful in helping keep me organized and moving forward. One thing I know for myself is I am a mom. So my time is like very limited. So when I did like sit down to work on my podcast, I needed to know, okay, what are the things I need to get done, you know, while Ellie's napping or at night or before she wakes up. And so I kind of unintentionally created like what I called my launch list. And it was all the way from the beginning of like, okay, I need to add a page to my website, or I need to, you know, it's just like make a running list of like all the things. And when you think of something like, oh, I need to do that at some point, write it down. And then eventually it becomes a checklist, and you just start working your way through the checklist. Even if you get one thing done that day, like you check something off your list and you're one step closer. So I just had like it was nothing fancy. Like I just had like a checklist on my notes on my iPhone. And I literally titled it podcast launch list, and it kept getting longer and longer and longer. But now they're like all checked off because, you know, as I would, you know, talk to my friend or realize in my research that I needed to do something, I would just add it to my list. And then I would make like, you know, subtasks under that. Okay, this is the big thing. Like, what are the little things that, and just break it down instead of having this huge goal of create a podcast. Okay, what are the like hundreds of little things that go into doing that? And just yes, yeah.
She agrees. There's all
yeah. And then you just get it done. She's in this phase right now where if I'm talking on my phone, like she knows I'm talking on my phone right now, she'll try and talk louder and louder and louder over me. It's kind of like she's contributing to the conversation, but it's also kind of like she wants me to pay attention to her. So yeah, I would say like just that's a really practical thing. Like just make a list of what you need to get done and start doing it. Like that's the only way to really get to the finish line of launching something is knowing what you need to get done, breaking it down into manageable steps, and then just doing one little thing at a time. And then eventually, like, those things just keep adding up. And you get to the point where you're ready to like launch the thing that you've been working on for 6 months. And it's crazy. But yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, okay. And if somebody wanted to listen to your podcast too, by the way, what is the name of your podcast? Where can people listen?
So my podcast is called Live Creatively, and you can listen to it pretty much anywhere. It's on Apple, Google, all the things. But Live Creatively with Megan Sjuts. It's just been a really fun process. I would say, like, one thing, I was really intimidated, at the beginning of, okay, God's kind of given me this heart for this and I want to do it, but I have no idea what I'm doing, and no idea where to start. And then, but so I was like kind of intimidated by the process of it. But the more I started doing it, and once I started recording interviews with people and other creatives, I was just surprised by how much I was enjoying it, and how instead of it being something that felt draining, it felt like something that was filling me up. And I think that is like really, to me, like a sign of you're doing something that God has for you. When it's something that, yeah, it takes a lot of work, and there will be days that it's hard and it does feel like work. But at the same time, like, when you are taking action and you're doing the thing that God is asking you to do, it should be something that fills you up instead of feels like it's draining you.
No, that is so, I love that. I absolutely love it. Megan, it's been fun chatting about how to have the courage to start. And I've heard a couple things, and then I'll ask if there's anything you want to add to the before we wrap. But, we've gone into I've heard you share, one, you've got to be rooted first in your relationship with God, time in his word, and conversations with him, because it's there where you really hear. Second, I've heard you talk about how to be connected to people for insight, their feedback, but also for their help. Like, who's doing the thing that you're dreaming about, reaching out, whether you know them or you don't know them, and asking for help. Then I've also heard you talk about creating like a tangible just way to help you realize what you need to do, out what you need to do, and then just starting to take one step at a time, not becoming overwhelmed by the full-blown picture, but making that big list of just all the things, so that way you can just start chipping one step at a time towards whatever goal. So what else do, just this big question that we've been tackling, like how to have the courage to start?
Yeah. There's a verse that I wanted to share. I wrote it down to share today because it, in God's timing, just kind of came up in my time with him yesterday morning. And I was like, oh, I got to write this down because this is like just perfect. And there's a verse in Ephesians chapter 11, verse 4. And I forget what translation it is, but it says, if you wait for the perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. And wow. I was like, wow, it's so true because like we were talking about perfectionism holding you back. And like, I think waiting for the perfect conditions means waiting for clarity, which, God never promises us full clarity on things that he's asking us to step into. Usually it's the opposite. So I think if you don't have clarity, that's probably a good sign that you're like headed in the right direction sometimes. But also I think like waiting for perfect conditions can look like trying to understand something in our understanding, right? So like, I think it is Philippians that says, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and trust God that he's leading you. Like if you sense that in your spirit and you keep getting confirmations and you just keep feeling drawn to something, even if you don't have clarity, don't wait for the perfect conditions because that's never going to happen, right? Because it's just life, obviously. Like this Instagram live is not perfect conditions, like my daughter's being crazy. Hopefully you guys can hear me, but it's like if you keep waiting and waiting for things to be perfect, you're never going to get it done. If I waited for the perfect conditions to start my podcast, it wouldn't be in existence right now because life is never perfect and it's only going to get busier. It's one thing that I have definitely learned is stepping into a season of motherhood is like there's never going to be a perfect time. So you just have to start and you just have to keep showing up and taking, even if it's just one little thing that you do each day to move you forward and take one more step towards your goal of creating whatever it is or stepping into whatever it is. Yeah, just you just have to start and like not allow perfectionism or fear or doubt or lack of clarity to hold you back.
Oh, that is gold. Like so good. Thank in that verse, how timely.
I
Like
know.
for
Yeah.
goodness. Thanks for hopping on just this
Yeah.
live, this warrior conversation. I love the tools, the resources this with, to have the courage to start and not allow perfectionism or anything to just hold us back or keep us caged in. But it's really
Mhm.
courage to start becoming who God made us to be. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're amazing. I love you, warrior friend, and just thanks for this conversation today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me and thank you for tolerating the craziness that is my life. You can't really see it right now, but you can probably hear it. But you know, it's a
That's
mess around here.
for real, raw, their warrior conversations. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Emily. It's always fun.
Always. I'm cheering you on big time, and I can't wait to keep listening to your podcast. You're amazing. You inspire me. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
See ya.
Bye, guys.